Welcome everyone to NASCAR Heat 3 coverage here at Knee Pit Gaming. Today's video, our first setup video for NASCAR Heat 3, is going to focus on the Daytona International Speedway. And what a place to go it is. Restrictor plates in use here on the high-banked super speedway. We'll be taking a look at the trucks, Xfinity, and the Cup cars. Now, I uploaded a gameplay video of the Cup cars at Daytona yesterday here on the channel, and I'll link that in the description below, so be sure to check that out if you want to see these setups in action. So as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at all three of the major series, trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, and the setups are going to be similar. We'll be talking about lap times in each for qualifying and letting you know about where that should put you on the grid. Now, a word about speed rating. You notice I'm at a 104 right there, which on the super speedways, the restrictor plate tracks your fastest lap, which is what determines your speed rating. You need help from the AI, and right now what I'm finding is that the AI are simply not fast enough to quite get me where I need to be. I'm sure eventually I will run a race where I'll get back in traffic and get that perfect lap that will eventually get me there, but don't be fooled by that. These setups that I'm going to show you are plenty fast enough to win at max difficulty AI. And you can see here, I've run 6 races so far at Daytona in the Cup car, and I've won 5 of them. So don't worry a whole lot about the speed rating, particularly on the Daytona and Talladega restrictor plate tracks. So that'll do it for our introduction. Let's get straight into the setups. Let's get started with the trucks. And I'll begin by letting you know that using this exact setup that you see on the screen right now, qualifying laps are around 49.50 seconds. That's in the qualifying session, so you're alone on the track, no draft help whatsoever. This setup, of course, isn't really for qualifying, but if you decide to use it for that, then about 49.5 seconds is about what you could expect, and that should have you qualifying on max AI somewhere around 15th to 18th. So not a bad starting spot. Let's go ahead and get into the setup itself. And for those of you who are familiar with my work in NASCAR Heat 2, you know that I generally don't get it very much into the shock settings. I'm trying to give you guys some sort of a baseline, and going into depth on shocks would be way more than we have time for in a video. So I generally try to keep a baseline number, and in this case, it's 10s across the board. Let's move on to the weight settings. We want maximum left side weight because we are turning left. This is not a road course. So nose weight is next, or front weight, and that is at 50.5, wedge 51.5, and then front and rear ride height both at the minimums of 4 inches. Now, if you are a little bit too tight and you would like the car to turn better, you can either decrease the front weight or decrease the wedge. Either one of those will do it. And of course, the opposite is also true if you are loose. Moving on to the spring settings, 1200 and 1000 in the front, 350 and 400 in the rear. You can actually get by with a little bit softer rear spring if you wanted to, but I was having some issues in the race with, particularly with the Cup cars, and I think a little bit with the Xfinity, with the rear end bottoming out a little bit. So I decided to raise it up and just go with a little bit safer setup. It doesn't really seem to affect the speed. This game doesn't get that in depth with aerodynamics, so you don't have to worry about increasing the drag with stiffer rear springs. Now, if you, once again, just like we talked about with the weight settings, with the springs, if you are tight on entry, then generally you'll want to either increase the left front or decrease the right front. If you are loose middle to exit, then remember, loose, you would want to decrease the right rear or increase the left rear. And of course, the opposite is also true in those circumstances. Moving on to the tires, and you notice this looks a little weird. Probably not what you're expecting to see, and not what I was hoping to have to use, but this is what I've shown to be the fastest for me. But if you want to go with more conventional tire pressure settings, on the left sides, somewhere around 26 or 27 pounds should be good. Right sides, 33 to 34 pounds should do the trick. But again, in my testing, this got me anywhere from 3 to 4 tenths a lap faster times. So that's why I'm using it. Miscellaneous settings, I was really hoping to get rid of the max camber this year, but it's not to be. It is still the fastest way around that I've seen. So we'll left front camber maxed out at 10 degrees, right front camber maxed out at negative 10 degrees. Front sway bar is a little bit stiffer than I normally use at 1.5 inches. No rear sway bar. Left side track bar is at 12 inches, right side at 14 inches. That's to help it, that split of 2 inches between the left and the right is to help it a little bit with turning on corner exits. So if you find that you're getting too tight, then you'll want to increase the track bar overall, and specifically the right side. If you're getting loose, then do the opposite. Brake bias isn't a huge deal here, since really all you'll be doing is dragging the brake sometimes if you decide to while you're in traffic. So 72% is a good number there. Grill tape is completely worthless in this game, just like it was in NASCAR Heat 2. I've tested it many times, and I really wanted it to be effective and do what it's supposed to do in real life, but it just doesn't. So I've decided to use 65%, which gets you somewhere between 210, 215 degrees, I think, on the oil temp, which is well below your max number, and which is what I wanted. So I'm leaving it at that tape number just in case some miracle happens and they decide to add in grill tape to do what it's supposed to do. But otherwise, it will make no difference to you. Wheel lock is at 10 degrees. And that is a pretty good setting if you want to adjust how quick your steering is. If you want the steering to be a little bit quicker, then you want to increase this number, go up to 11, 12, and so on. If you want the steering to be slower, so you'll have to use more wheel to turn, then you'll want to go down on this number to 9, 8, 7, and so on. Steering offset is what helps with the pull to the left. So I'm using 0.10 to offset all of the camber that I've got in the front end. You can use more or less to help with the pull to the left. If you use a steering offset of 0, it's going to pull very hard to the left. Gear settings, fairly standard here, 3, 2, 1.4, and 1.0 as first through fourth gears, and then a rear end ratio of 3.0. And you've got some maneuverability there. You can go down a little bit on the gear or up a little bit, and you should be perfectly fine. So you can work with the sweet spot there. That'll take care of the trucks. Now let's move on to Xfinity. You'll begin by noticing that the Xfinity car setup is nearly identical to the truck setup. So we're not going to go through every one of these sections as we did with the trucks, but I do want to let you know that with this setup under qualifying conditions, I ran somewhere around a 48.6, 48.7, somewhere in that range. And that'll put you somewhere around 18th to 20th on the grid, just depending on what the AI do for that particular race. So somewhere around midfield there. Again, this setup is not optimized for qualifying. This is all about the race. As far as the differences between this setup and the trucks, we're looking at track bar and grill tape being the only real differences. Left side track bar is at 10 inches, right side track bar is at 12 inches, a little bit lower than what we saw with the truck. And grill tape is at 60%, again, a little bit lower than the trucks. That should still be plenty hot enough on the oil temp. If you desire to increase that, then you have a little bit of leeway before you have to worry about any overheating. So that'll take care of the Xfinity cars. Next, we'll move to Cup. Getting started with the Cup cars, we'll talk about lap times. And again, under qualifying conditions, I'm somewhere around a 45.5 second lap. And that, in this case, will put you on the pole or very close to it. Again, the AI don't run exactly the same times every race, but it should put you on the pole or somewhere in the top 5, generally speaking. Now, this setup is nearly identical to the trucks and Xfinity with a couple of exceptions. Now, the track bar is keeping the settings from Xfinity, 10 inches on the left, 12 inches on the right, and the grill tape is at 55%, so just a little bit lower due to the engine heat, but again, still leaving you a little bit of room if you decide to adjust that. Otherwise, everything is exactly the same. If you want to see these in action, I uploaded a video yesterday showing gameplay at Daytona in the Monster Energy Cup car, so be sure to check that out. And hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining me, and stay tuned for more NASCAR Heat 3 here at Knee Pit Gaming.